Hello all and welcome back. I hope you're doing really well. Thank you for the love and support on the most recent video. Seriously appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed for future content as I've got a ton more videos coming about crypto and the ever-growing Hedera ecosystem. Lots to cover again in today's video. More Hedera news looking at decentralized finance and the upcoming release of a few DEXs, namely Hbar Hsuite and Saucerswap, as well as an interesting thread on Twitter about Solana, and I will also be covering some news on the Ethereum testnet merges in anticipation of their mainnet merge. Taking a quick look at the crypto bubbles, what's happening, majority of the altcoins are bleeding out. Bitcoin has fallen back below the $30,000 level, which is something that I fully anticipated. As I have mentioned in many different videos, we are still teetering on a knife edge. Inflation is still rampant, and de-risking is still certainly on the minds of the majority of investors and institutions alike. We do have, I believe, some key economic data being released later today in the United States, and that will help guide the Fed's next meeting as to what they do with monetary policy and interest rates. And of course, they fully dictate risk on and risk off for institutions, which will primarily affect the markets and determine the direction of where we move next. Majority of these projects haven't changed for me. I'm still dollar cost averaging into many of my positions. Some of you have mentioned in the comments that you've picked up some Chainlink very recently and it's had a nice pump. Make sure you guys are taking profits out of these if you are buying in at the moment. There is still further downside that could happen if the hawkish policy continues over in the States. That's my take on it. The SEC will be approving a Bitcoin ETF soon, says Grayscale and Bitwise. This is referencing those spot ETFs. Covered a few of them that went live in Australia, which have seen quite a lot of demand. However, it still speaks to reason that the majority of the capital flowing around in equities markets is obviously in the United States, and a spot ETF in the United States would be incredibly bullish and would see a ton of attention from institutional and retail investors. Don't forget, you've got massive pension funds, etc., which would be able to pick up those spot ETFs for their clients. Jumping into that Ethereum testnet merge news. So the testnet merge of Ropsten has officially been completed. 2 more to go. If everything goes smoothly, it pushes out to the mainnet and a new era begins for Ethereum. This would actually be quite a bullish merge if it does get successfully completed. There's a lot of sell side pressure at the moment from those that run the network due to the costs involved with proof of work. You would alleviate a lot of that sell side pressure, which would enable the price to increase, plus lots of other things they are doing as well to make the tokenomics of the network a lot more price appreciation heavy. As Sivo replies, same old ETH, sounds lucrative, 30% loss in mine blocks, lost in security for scalability, and still expensive gas fees. I will just cover that in a second, as he is correct. But the Ropsten testnet merge has happened. There are 2 more that need to take place, the Sepolia and 𝗟𝗚𝗙𝗚 testnet merges, and then the final Ethereum mainnet merge will take place. Hopefully they are sticking to schedules. As we've seen many times in the past, things get delayed almost indefinitely over on Ethereum. As Sivo was alluding to, the crypto media propagandists and influencers, so unfortunately 30% of those blocks are failing and nobody knows why. No further comment from developers at this time, which obviously knocks the confidence of what's going on over on Ethereum. Talking about crypto partnerships, VEHCHAIN has just partnered with UFC to become the official Layer 1 blockchain partner in a historic global marketing event. 900 million households across 175 countries that will receive unprecedented brand/asset integration. I don't actually hold any VEHCHAIN. I used to quite a long time ago. In my opinion, I think a lot of the potential that VEHCHAIN has is still strong. However, there are obviously other chains, or hashgraphs, for example, Hedera, that could definitely facilitate, and there have been tests showing that it can facilitate all the functions that VEHCHAIN can do in a more rapid and scalable environment. Therefore, my money's on other chains, for example, Hedera. Speaking of Sivo, as I mentioned a minute ago, he has just published an article on Medium, very interesting one, talking about decentralized finance, and is talking about incumbents like Ethereum. I'm going to skip over some of it as it is very long and we'll be here for quite a while. I will try and leave this link down in the description. I would urge you to read it as there is a lot of fantastic information in here. However, scrolling towards the bottom and looking at the sort of summary section, no question about the demand for DeFi. At the time of writing, Ethereum currently has $69 billion worth of TVL. Obviously, this was much, much higher before the lunar meltdown. The vast majority of this capital is stored in DeFi applications, Curve being 8.55 billion, Uniswap at nearly 6 billion, MakerDAO at nearly 10 billion, and Aave at 8.4 billion. DeFi users do require four things: 24/7 access to their funds, i.e. non-custodial, and being non-custodial, I should say, security, sustainable economics, and a chance to profit. The current state of Solana fails at numbers 1 and 4 because of downtime and predatory VCs, as well as SRM tokenomics. The current state of Ethereum fails at number 3 as there is high gas fees and MEV chips away at your capital. Hedera currently has the ability to meet all 4 criteria in a fast and frictionless way. With how underused the mainnet is, opportunities abound for those willing to take the first leap, betting on fundamentals. He then begins to talk about Saucerswap. If you build it, they will come. So a quiet team is currently chipping away at a protocol with the potential to unlock or to lock up billions of dollars in crypto assets and kickstart a whole new chapter for Hedera Hashgraph mass adoption. Saucerswap is obviously similar to Uniswap in the fact that it's a DEX. They also plan to offer a bridge, single-side staking, community pools, and DAO-based governance models. These services themselves are not new. What isn't broken doesn't need fixing. What is new, though, is the ease at which users will be able to interact with DeFi. Gone are the days of getting ruined on a trade because the miner's arbitrage bot targeted your Uniswap transaction, i.e. front-running or sniping. Gone are the days of DeFi being accessible only to those who can stomach $400 gas fees to stake their tokens. Same goes for things like the NFT ecosystems. Incredibly predatory pricing over on the Ethereum mainnets for NFTs due to the sheer cost of gas fees being incorporated. The Hedera network has an impeccable record with uptime, microscopic fees, and ABFT security levels. Saucerswap completes my Hedera investment thesis by providing a critical piece of infrastructure and most importantly to me, a chance to profit by betting on fundamentals, not to mention being very early to the ecosystem. Of course, make sure you guys are doing your own research into these protocols and platforms before you decide to invest, lock up capital, or do anything regarding your finances. It's very important that you actually understand what is happening. A classic motto to live by here is, of course, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, and that's in reference to things like APRs, APYs, and rewards. Talking of those DEXs, so the two that are now still waiting for release are Hbar Hsuite and Saucerswap. If we cover some latest news from Hbar Hsuite, here are some screenshots I took from the Discord server from 𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗦, which is one of the dev team, talking about the speculation of the Hsuite token in the future and everyone trying to work out how much money you can make from it. What people do also need to take into consideration is that Hbar Hsuite isn't just a DEX, it's a brand. We will be building an NFT marketplace and have many other ideas we are also talking about. By investing into the Hsuite token, you aren't just buying into a DEX. All the upcoming projects in the future that fall under the Hbar Hsuite umbrella will also affect the price of Hsuite. The more utility we provide and the more products that are powered and run by Hbar Hsuite will also play a role in the price of the token. The more we build and the more value we bring, the better Hbar does in price, also benefits the price of Hsuite. There are so many factors and variables that affect the price of tokens. For example, all core members tokens are locked for 24 months. We can't sell a single token for 2 years. Those who bought into the pre-sale before round 1 went live, so that was probably not many of us that are watching this video, their tokens are locked for 12 months and then they are able to liquidate 8% of their total supply per month after that. Hbar Hsuite or Hsuite tokens wasn't made to become a quick flip. Hbar Hsuite technology is something that has never been done on any other network. Of course, I've mentioned these guys aren't using smart contracts. They are leveraging the HTS and HCS systems built natively on top of Hedera to facilitate them via smart nodes as opposed to smart contracts. Obviously, Saucerswap is using smart contracts. So similar projects, different approaches to completing those. If we talk about this as well, 𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗦 from the Hbar Hsuite said new tokens will be introduced into the system, both for pools and the launchpad. So this is in relation to lots of different liquidity pools being created on Tangent Finance with unscrupulous sort of meme tokens or piss take tokens effectively, which are drawing a lot of attention and potentially could trick new investors into accidentally providing liquidity into something that is worthless. These are responses from Hbar Hsuite, and I will cover a response from 𝗟𝗚𝗚𝗚 from Saucerswap as to how they're going to combat this on their particular dexes. So he goes on to say, submitting a proposals will be voted by all Hsuite holders. We are truly a DEX, but also truly a DAO. So we will be decentralized, but still controlled by a decentralized anonymous organization, which are community of holders. No way anyone can submit tokens wildly without the approval of the community, and no way anyone can create a pool by giving a random high price to a newly created token. So Hbar Hsuite is taking the approach of being a DAO, and votes will take place on which liquidity pools can be created and which tokens can be supported. 𝗟𝗚𝗚𝗚 from Saucerswap has also said there'll be safeguards in place. Slightly different approach, but a good one nonetheless. For one, you'll be able to see token IDs for all available tokens on our DEX. Therefore, you can verify whether it is a legit token. I know there have been instances of USDC on the Tangent DEX, which aren't the actual true USDC token. Being able to verify those token IDs by yourself should hopefully prevent this. Additionally, as 𝗟𝗚𝗚𝗚𝗚 mentioned, it won't be as cheap to create a pool on Saucerswap. This is by design as a deterrent. The cost will not be exorbitant, but it won't be unreasonably cheap either. There's a sweet spot. Finally, although anyone can create a pool with any two HTS tokens, that does not mean that all tokens used on our DEX will be listed in our token menus. This is to protect users from accidentally clicking on a fake USDC, for example. Notable and generally trustworthy coins will be displayed by default in our menus. So things like Dovu, Jam, etc. and Source, of course, will be listed by default. For a user to select that fake USDC token, they would have to manually enter the token ID for it to be shown. This is kind of similar to how PancakeSwap operates. If any of you guys have used that in the past, you have to associate and add those tokens to your sort of UI Explorer in order for you to be able to see them. Generally, safe tokens are supported by default. We are striking a balance of being decentralized and giving autonomy to our users, whilst also protecting them as much as we can through a seamless and interactive UX. So great responses from those two different teams talking about how they're going to protect the community, which I obviously stand by wholeheartedly and is incredibly important for a fledgling ecosystem. Let's talk about CBDCs and the Digital Pound Foundation. So in an interview with Blockworks, Baron Paul, who most recently led the Bank of England FinTech Hub and Future of Finance initiatives, discussed his move to crypto and how central banks are thinking about stable coins and CBDCs. And this obviously comes back as more rumors that a CBDC will be coming to the United Kingdom. And there are obviously ties to several different chains, blockchains, whatever you want to call them. Some of those obviously being Hedera as well. However, it's interesting that a lot of central banks are still moving on this CBDC narrative, and who better to use than Hedera. I wanted to touch on this Solana thread, as some of you may have experienced the ecosystem before. It's obviously quite a large DeFi ecosystem, a layer one that has done fairly well over the past sort of 12 months or so. However, is now seriously starting to just burst at the seams effectively with the lack of security on the network and stability on the network, something that I have said previously, and obviously Sivo said in that article, that Hedera fixes. So this is quite a long one, so I'm really going to speed run through this. Due to repeated downtime, Solana has the second worst final technical risk score of the 15 chains that we've reviewed so far. Only Ronin Network has a lower score at this point. This is for a variety of reasons. Obviously, Ronin Network was part of that exploit where a lot of money was lost. Solana's base score is low. Despite a public software repository and some good documentation, their infrastructure relating to nodes is subpar. There is only one node implementation. We'll address this issue later. The updates are handled in a haphazard manner, and there is no process for an archive node. It is still unclear where the chain stores its history. There have been no documented updates on the Solar Bridge after archives were abandoned, aside from the founder's Reddit comment from 1 year ago that states the chain is archived to Arweave. The validators store 2 days of history, and there have been no documented updates. While Solana Beach, Solana Scan have made significant strides in UX, their utility as a block explorer still does not match that of Etherscan. Frequent 404 errors and failed searches plagued by researchers when trying to view components of older transaction. This raises questions about the nature of Solana as a blockchain if it is not easily verifiable. In addition, Solana as a chain has been audited years ago. The node software has never been audited. 2019 audit focuses on architecture and not node software. 3 years of subsequent iterations are thus unaudited. This is very alarming given the lack of formal progress or process relating to upgrading any part of Solana. The production version of the chain is at a whim of whichever core contributor sees the push request. This presents risk to user funds and is a single point of failure. Solana Labs should pursue formal verification on this chain to ensure that functions are as intended, like other leading layer 1s do. Credit where credit's due, Solana has made significant strides in validation decentralization, thanks to an impressive program that incentivizes many validators on other continents. Solana scores well on this point. Nonetheless, it is unclear what role these validators play. Upon downtime, a selection of 25 validators restarted the chain, coordinated via Google Docs. That's pretty much unacceptable. What is a blockchain? We would like to thank Solana for sharing the Google Doc explaining their chain restart process. This is nice transparency. Is this the future of finance? This is the eighth occurrence. How the chain of such significance can be controlled by 25 groups is incomprehensible and unsafe. The potential for chain manipulation is high. Given that 2 of these chain failures occurred in less than 6 months, an already unimpressive score is docked twice by half. This leaves their score at 25% of its original value. There was some discussion amongst validators about censoring specific transactions that caused the downtime, which would have incurred a further penalty, but fortunately this was not necessary. So they're effectively talking about blocking transactions that could potentially take the network down, which is a complete joke, really, when you actually think about it. We strongly advise Solana to increase the number of node implementations they offer to validators. Validators identified this in last week's downtime as a potential contributing factor. 1 is not enough. Other leading layer 1s have 5 or more. They have an impressive bug bounty though, as Austin Federa correctly identifies. Maybe Solana would considering offering full-time contracts for security maintenance instead of a bug bounty system they currently operate. This would surely lead to better outcomes and may even prove cheaper than the current payout amount. All in all, Solana presents systematic technical issues. There is no doubt about it. User funds in our eyes are at risk. We penalize them heavily for downtime because users cannot access their funds when the chain goes down. Solana justifies this as still being in beta. The fact that Solana has to state to users that the funds are safe is probably an indicator that they aren't. This isn't a question people should have to consider, which I completely agree. Seriously important in a decentralized ecosystem. This is frankly inexcusable given the TVL of this chain and how prevalent it is in DeFi. Any serious DeFi risk analysis will identify that the risk-adjusted return for any activity on the chain makes the opportunities irrelevant. Of course it does. If you're at risk of losing absolutely everything because the chain goes offline and then it gets rugged, God forbid, any potential gains are completely offset by that total loss. This is not to say things won't change. We know some of the biggest brains in the industry work on Solana. They just need to show the development process the respect it deserves. Their users deserve better. DeFi deserves better. I completely agree. I'm going to stop there for the rest of that because it just talks about the remainder of what's happening with Solana and how it impacts users. However, it stands to reason that DeFi Safety reckons that users' funds are at risk on the Solana chain due to the lack of transparency and security, as well as continued downtime. This is obviously not something that we should be seeing happen on a chain with TVL as high as Solana's is. Hopefully, we will start to see other layer 1s come through. Obviously, the Hedera ecosystem, the DeFi ecosystem, is really starting to get ready to take off, and hopefully we will acquire some of that TVL from these chains that aren't providing the services that they should be to users at the end of the day. Anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. This was an update from many different sort of layer 1 perspectives, and the fact that we are starting to see updates from the DEXs on Hedera. Saucerswap have also mentioned that they are gearing up for some more announcements, and they have further iterated that people need to ensure that the source token is associated to their wallets if they hold the NFTs, as if the airdrop is going to be taking place very soon. If we see the airdrop take place soon, we should also see announcements regarding their launch, as that was always part of their timeline, and they have rigidly stuck to that. Anyway, leave a like if you liked it, drop a comment if you've got something to say. I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.